Hello friends, and welcome back to Flosstube and Variety Show number 9. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I'm really happy to have you join me this morning. This is Friday, July 16th. I haven't been saying that in the videos, but I notice a lot of the Flosstube people I watch do, and I guess it helps because sometimes the video doesn't get posted on the day that it's recorded, and I don't know, maybe some world event would happen between when I record this and when it's posted, and you all would be surprised that I didn't have a succinct and scintillating comment to make on that world event. So I should tell you, July 16th, 2021. And because this is Flosstube, you can expect to hear about my cross stitch, and because it's a variety show, you can expect to hear about other things. So today, I'll show you some cross stitch, and then we'll see what else I show you. So we'll start with Temperature Tree by StitchinMommy, Sarah Hughes. This is a Etsy shop. The idea here is that each leaf on the tree is a different color that represents the high temperature of that day. So the 365 are actually 366 leaves on this tree, but you just don't stitch the 29th leaf on the February branch if you're not in a leap year. And I have been keeping up on the July, so I've stitched through yesterday. You can see that we've had a lot of the same color, a lot of the upper 80s and low 90s, which is very typical for July in North Carolina. And I also stitched the February leaves. And this leaf here is the darkest color that I've stitched so far, the coldest high temperature. And already in February, we were starting to get some hotter weather. That's in the upper 70s, I think. So this is, again, it's not that unusual. It's not unusual, but you can begin to see, and when I do March and April in the next week or two, you'll be able to see how temperature goes. And of course it goes this way. Of course it goes this way. This is how the seasons go, but it's going to be very interesting and I think pretty to see the whole thing come together. So that's Temperature Tree. The next one I'm going to show you is Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather by Kite. And I've mentioned before, this is a paint based on a painting of a 19th century artist. And I have been working over here. I've just hit the edge of that shadow on this level, and I haven't stitched this brighter color yet. Right around there is where 100 stitches from the left edge is, so that's where my gridding ends, as you'll see. So I'm gonna just finish up in here and then go up in here before I move farther left toward the center of the picture. I've been working on this for the Tour de France challenge in Full Coverage Fanatics. And I'm sorry there's a thread there. It's because I am not going to, I took it out of the hoop, I wasn't done, and I'm not gonna cut the thread or I'll lose my place and so on. But you can see how, I mean, so clear, the definition of the different steps of the marble area there. So up in here, this right here will probably finish the Tour de France. This right here would finish the Tour de France for me. I'm only about 340 stitches from the end of that goal, which was 3,418, which is 1 stitch per kilometer of the race. So I'll work up here, after I'll finish that thread, I'll work up here next. And possibly I'll finish most of this area. I do have to do the horizontal gridding up in here first. I might finish this part before the next time I make a video. So that's that. I'm enjoying this. Hold it back a bit. And I've also worked on Ornament. So this is a black and white photo or image of it. This is by ZephyrMood, which is an Etsy shop. And I did this square and I started on this one. So making progress, and here's the whole thing that I have so far. I enjoy this. It goes much faster than Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather. And you can see that newest square there. I like that. So probably this week I will finish that other square. And what I really need to do is to move on, get going again on the Talavera pattern. It's beautiful and it's fun to stitch, but I've just gotten going on this. You know, different cross stitchers I've noticed have different schemes for how they work on their projects. And some of them have a rotation of, you know, 1 day or 3 days or something per project. Some of them work really according to challenges in the Facebook groups that they're part of. There's several Facebook groups that have cross-stitch encouraging challenges as their basis. And I'm only doing the full coverage fanatics and only that one full coverage piece. So everything else I work on my own whim. Some people do things based on stitch-alongs or things of that sort that are maybe on Instagram or other places. For instance, the Blackbird Design Weekend weekend stitch-along that I do first weekend of each month. That Salute to Abigail piece that I've shown before is part of that. So I don't know, I just do things, at this point anyway, I'm just doing things until I get tired of them and then I do something else. And sometimes that means I do it 1 day, shift to something else, and then the 3rd day I come back to the original one. And sometimes it's how much energy and effort I want to put into a complicated piece as opposed to something simpler. However, if I were to go by that only on Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather, I wouldn't make much progress. I need a numerical, quantifiable goal for that because it's challenging to stitch it. It's, you know, a lot of the same color, and confetti stitching, which is 1 or 2 stitches of a color in an area, and then you have to switch to another color, and then another color, and another color. Some of those 10 by 10 blocks have 30 different colors in them. So that would just be pretty tedious if that were the only project I'm working on, which is one of the reasons I think it's good to have a variety of projects going with some limits, some sensibleness to it. Okay, yeah. So that's what I've been working on between now and next week. I probably will pull out Talavera, so maybe next week you'll see more of that. So for the variety show portion today, I wanted to talk to you more about my quilts. So first of all, I'm going to put some pictures in of a quilt that I made and gave to my aunt for Christmas this past year. And this is a quilt that's really, I would say, a double bed size quilt. I mean, it would, as I was saying before my camera cut out, I made this quilt for my aunt. I'm going to show you pictures of it because I gave it to her, so I don't have it. And it's a big quilt, so I can't really hold it up here very easily. But it is a traditional block called Jacob's Ladder. And I really like traditional geometric quilts and blocks because depending on how you set them, you get different effects. So this one is set in one of the traditional ways to set it, where it's in a cross hatch pattern, and the half square triangles give the step idea. It's an easy, simple, I should say simple pattern, and I think very effective. And for this, I used Moda Off-White. It is the background fabric. I had a collection of 2.5-inch strips. It wasn't a complete jelly roll. It was maybe 12 different strips and a few mini charms of the print fabrics. And then I added in a very beautiful Kona fabric, which I believe is the one that's called Pacific, and to supplement. And I think that it turned out very striking, very beautiful. my aunt likes it, so that's good. And the quilting pattern on it, which I'm going to show a picture of myself standing at the long arm machine, which is how I quilted it, is a flowery meander chrysanthemum looking thing, which is one I like to do. So that was that project. I also will show you a project or a couple projects, one project that I made from this book, which is called Little Gatherings, and it's by Lisa Bongean. And she's known as primitive, this is a Primitive Gatherings publication. She likes Civil War reproduction fabrics and darker, more primitive looking colors. I've realized that that's a thing, primitive. I tend to like brighter colors, but of course, any quilt that you see, you can make in any fabric. So just because these are in darker fabrics doesn't mean you can't make them in any color fabric. So, here's one I have not made. I'd like to make it. Doesn't that look, that's really cute, isn't it? Again, these are traditional blocks, most of these. I did make this one. It's a bear patch in a bear patch. It's about, with those borders as it's shown, it's about 14 inches square. And I made it in purple and turquoise. And it was really nice. I gave it to a friend of mine. So, a lot of fun patterns in here. And these patterns, one of the things that makes the smallness of them work is that she recommends using a product like this, which is 1/2 inch triangle paper. And so you put your fabric together and you stitch along the lines, basically. This is geared for 5-inch charm squares, but you put your fabric right sides together, you put this paper on top of it, and then you stitch on the dotted lines and you cut on the solid lines, and you get perfect half square triangles. And that is an amazing product, helpful in making small quilts of this sort. Let me just shift something here so that I can show you. Here's a quilt that I made from that book. So, you can see from my hand, I'll just show you one portion of it. So these are 1/2 inch, half square triangles. And then here in the center is, basically it's an Ohio star block on point, or sideways, I think is what you would call that. And then it has these around it, and then there are 5 of those. So this whole quilt is about 24 or 22 inches wide. And you see that I chose to bind it in pieces of the different colors. And this, the backing is a white on white, well, it's a white on cream. You might not be able to see that on the camera, but it is a print, it's not a solid. But all of those pieces are solids. And this was fun to do. It really was. It's so satisfying to be able to make something tiny and actually have it turn out well. Turn out with the points meeting and, a certain amount of precision and success that way. And the quilting is very simple because I didn't want to detract from the piecing, and I didn't want to, there are a lot of seams. So it's uneven thickness. The places where the background fabric is just one piece of fabric and the batting and the backing. But here, there's a lot of seams in there. So it just was easier to just do very simple quilting. So that was fun. I did that in 2017. My friend Cindy gave me this book, and I've completed 2 projects out of that book, and probably will be doing another one, at least one out of there that I want to do. So years ago, I took a class at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Show. That's what it used to be called. It's now called the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival, I think. At the time, it was in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is only about a 3.5-hour drive from here. It's now annually, other than the COVID year, in Hampton, Virginia, because of it grew so much that they couldn't handle it in Williamsburg anymore. But I believe this was in 2000, I mean, in 1995 was the first year I went, when my child was a baby. And I left him with my husband with instructions, which were mostly followed. But I took a class from Nancy Johnson-Srebro, Nancy Johnson-Srebro. And this book was her book. And, you know, here she was in the 90s. Look at the hair. I haven't checked to see if she's still alive, but this was a very, very good class. Her idea was to make a full-size quilt using miniature quilt techniques. So this is, there are 9 blocks here. Each of these blocks could be a block of a regular quilt, except that it's only 30 inches or 25 inches square. But a regular quilt, this would be a king-size quilt if you did it in a normal way. So that's her idea, and her piecing and her designs are just amazing. And so you can get an idea, here's a few pictures from the book of how small her quilts are, but they look like regular quilts. And that is actually the definition of a miniature quilt, is a quilt that proportionally looks like a bed-size quilt, but it's much smaller. That's a miniature quilt, as opposed to just a small quilt or a wall hanging. So I made this from that book, and as you see, this was before I fully understood fabric choices, because that background fabric is too busy for the red and blue. But I really like this. Maybe I'll make this again with more appropriate fabric choices, but you know, it worked. The precision piecing techniques worked, and I like the sashing, this pieced strip sashing. Really, really nice. So I might make that again. This is all handmade. Well, actually, I think the blocks are machine. I think I sewed these blocks and these strips by machine, but I quilted it, such quilting as there is, by hand. And I also didn't know much about binding, so my binding corners are not good. So if I remade this, I think it would be better in pretty much every respect. Another way to make miniature quilts is to use paper piecing, foundation paper piecing, and that's the method that I used on this. And as you see, there's bear paw, or the center blocks, and then there are trees going around the outside. So I call this one the Teddy Bear's Picnic, because it's little bears, so teddy bears, and they're in the woods. And that bear in the middle is a polar bear. This, you know, the fabric was not highest quality, and it was in the sun for a while, so it faded quite a bit. And I enjoyed making this. These blocks are all hand pieced, and then the quilt was assembled by machine. That is, I put the sashing and the border on by machine and the binding, and then I machine quilted it, actually. Again, very simple, because the piecing has a lot of seams in it, and this is actually pieced on muslin. So it was foundation pieced, not on paper that you rip out, but on muslin that stays in the quilt. So there's a few thicknesses there, but I really liked that one. That I made, according to the label, in 2003, and I wish that I would put a label on every quilt, but I don't remember to. So because of the little glitch in my camera, I actually don't know how long I've been filming, but hopefully it's not too long. I did want to leave you with one little cute thing. This was from 1960, and that's me. Now, there's a flower behind me, so my hair doesn't go up like that. You just have to look. But wasn't I just adorable? That was my parents' Christmas card in 1960. So that was that. We are not Well, you know, there is a phenomenon called Christmas in July, where if you're going to make Christmas decor or Christmas presents, you better get started. Don't wait till November. That's wise advice there. So you can count this little Christmas card as my Christmas in July, because I'm not really doing that much otherwise. So thank you so much for watching. If you're a new viewer, I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll check some of my older videos. If you are a returning viewer, I appreciate you coming back, and I hope that you will continue to come back and find things that are of interest to you. I have a wide range of interests, and hopefully some of it is interesting to you. I record about once a week, try to keep it under 25 minutes altogether, between 20 and 25 minutes, usually on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And if you don't want to miss my next video or any of my future videos, I recommend that you subscribe and then hit the little notifications bell so that you won't miss anything. And I appreciate you watching, and I hope that you have a great week of cross stitch or quilting or whatever your interests are, and many blessings to you, friends.